Before the story begins, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from, and at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the ride. It all started on a Monday morning in the gleaming glass tower of Griffin Imports when CEO Logan Griffin stormed into the conference room like a hurricane. His face red, a crumpled envelope in his hand. Executives froze, their coffee cups hovering halfway to their lips, because everyone could feel the storm brewing. "This has to be a joke," Logan muttered, tossing the papers onto the mahogany table. They scattered like a deck of cards. Basque? Who in the 21st century sends official documents in Basque? His assistant Mariana swallowed hard, whispering that she had already called 4 translation agencies and none could help. Logan's voice rose like thunder. "Useless. A global company and not one of you can translate a single piece of paper." He turned pacing before finally snapping. "Fine. I'll give my entire month's salary, $150,000, to whoever translates this right now. Any takers?" Nervous laughter rippled through the room. None of the polished executives had even heard Basque spoken. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the air conditioner. Then from the back of the room came a voice, subtle, steady, unexpected. "I can translate it." Silence slammed down like a curtain. Heads turned toward the woman standing by the water cooler in a wrinkled blue uniform, mop in hand, a bucket of disinfectant at her feet. Rosie Monroe, the cleaning lady. Her forehead glistened with sweat from scrubbing floors, but her eyes were clear, calm, and unflinching. Logan blinked in disbelief. "What?" "I said I can translate it," she repeated firmly. "These papers are in Basque. I understand them." A few executives snorted, whispering cruel jokes, but Rosie walked forward with quiet dignity. "May I take a look?" Logan folded his arms, smirking. "You expect me to believe a cleaning lady knows Basque?" Rosie simply extended her hand. "I expect you to hand me the papers. That's all." For a long second, Logan hesitated, but something in her steady gaze unnerved him. With a mocking flourish, he handed her the documents. Rosie scanned the lines with practiced ease, her lips moving silently. After only a few moments, she looked up. "This is a notice of inheritance," she said calmly. "A woman named Lourdes Garmendia passed away last month. She was your great-aunt on your mother's side. She left you property and a large sum in Bilbao. The document states you're the only living heir. But you must confirm acceptance by 5 o'clock today or everything is lost." The room froze, time itself seeming to stop. Mariana glanced at her watch. It was already 3:03 p.m. For a few seconds Logan Griffin stood completely still, his jaw tight, the arrogant smirk gone as the weight of Rosie's words sank in. The executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, not knowing whether to laugh at the absurdity of a janitor deciphering inheritance papers or to stay silent in case she was right. Logan grabbed his phone, his hands not as steady as usual, and barked at Mariana to get the number of the Spanish consulate. He read the names, the dates, the details, every line Rosie had translated, and when the voice on the other end confirmed it, the color drained from his face. It was real. His great-aunt had left him a fortune, and the acceptance deadline was in less than 2 hours. Suddenly the mocking tone evaporated, replaced by something new, something no one in that room had seen in Logan Griffin before. Urgency and, for the briefest moment, respect for the woman standing calmly with a mop. "We have less than 2 hours," Logan said through gritted teeth. "Prepare a reply, sign it, get it sent. Rosie, can you translate the rest?" She nodded without hesitation. "I'll need a computer. Mariana, take her to my office. Give her everything she needs." The executives stared in shock as the cleaning lady was escorted out like a visiting dignitary. Some whispered that the world had gone mad, that Logan was humiliating himself by trusting someone like her. But Logan ignored them. He had no choice. By 5 o'clock he could either be the sole heir of millions or the fool who lost everything because he dismissed the only person in the room who could save him. Rosie sat at Logan's sleek glass desk, her hands flying across the keyboard with precision. She translated legal jargon, formatted official statements, and typed with the ease of someone who had lived in this world before. Mariana watched in awe as line after line appeared. Perfectly phrased, impeccably structured. It was clear this wasn't guesswork. Rosie was a professional. At 4:32, Logan signed the final document, his expensive pen trembling slightly between his fingers. At 4:47, the priority mail courier arrived, collected the envelope, and left. The room exhaled as if they had all been holding their breath. Logan leaned against the desk, rubbing his temples. "You just saved me millions," he said hoarsely. "I'll pay you." Rosie looked up, meeting his gaze without fear. "You already said what you'd pay. 150,000. Your monthly salary." The room had gone silent again. Logan blinked as if he hadn't heard correctly. "That was a joke. I took it seriously. And I delivered." Her voice was calm even with no hint of greed. "I don't want a penny more than what you promised. But I also don't want a penny less." Executives muttered in disbelief. A cleaning lady demanding 6 figures from a billionaire CEO? It sounded insane. Yet the silence in Logan's office told everyone it was also completely justified. He could have laughed it off, threatened her, refused. But the truth was undeniable. Without her, he would have lost it all. Finally, with a look somewhere between irritation and reluctant admiration, Logan pulled out his checkbook, signed his name with a flourish, and handed her the slip. Rosie folded it neatly, slipped it into her pocket, and said simply, "Thank you." Then she walked out, mop and bucket in hand, leaving behind a stunned floor of executives and a CEO who, for the first time in years, had been outmaneuvered. That night Logan couldn't sleep. He tossed in his silk sheets, replaying the moment when Rosie had calmly demanded his salary. No one had ever spoken to him like that. She hadn't begged, hadn't flattered, hadn't tried to manipulate. She had simply stood her ground with quiet dignity and delivered results no one else could. The next morning, curiosity gnawed at him until he found himself walking down to the basement where the cleaning supplies were stored. Rosie was there, stacking bottles of disinfectant, her uniform slightly damp from wiping down hallways. "Rosie," he said, his voice echoing off the tiled walls. She didn't look surprised. "Mr. Griffin, do you need something cleaned?" He cleared his throat, suddenly feeling awkward. "I want to make you an offer." She raised an eyebrow, still facing the shelves. "An offer?" "Yes. Freelance interpreter for the company. You keep your current job, but whenever we have international clients, we'll call you. You'll be paid per project." She turned to face him now, arms crossed, eyes steady. "And the conditions?" "Conditions?" Logan frowned. "You tell me. No humiliation. No pats on the head. If I accept, I want to be treated as a professional, not as a novelty or a mascot." Logan blinked, then nodded slowly. "Deal." Rosie gave a small, satisfied nod. "Then I accept." 3 days later she sat in the 10th floor conference room, no longer in her janitor's uniform but in a simple blouse and blazer, flanked by the company's official translators. The client, a French import firm, spoke quickly, throwing in legal and technical terms. James, the senior translator, confidently declared, "He's asking about ISO certifications." Rosie cleared her throat softly. "Actually," she said, her voice polite but firm, "he asked about origin, traceability, and environmental compliance. He didn't mention ISO." James shot her an annoyed glare. "I've spoken French for 15 years. Rosie's eyes didn't waver. "So have I." And he said, "Conformit environmental. That's very different from ISO." The French client, who understood a little English, leaned forward, nodding. "Exactly. Merci, madame." A ripple of tension went around the table. James flushed, suddenly unsure of himself, and Logan, watching from the end of the table, hid a smile behind his hand. Throughout the rest of the meeting, Rosie quietly corrected small but important errors, not in a way that embarrassed others but with a calm authority that couldn't be denied. By the end, it was clear to everyone in the room that she wasn't just competent. She was indispensable. After the clients left, James stormed out, humiliated. The junior translator mumbled an apology to Rosie before slinking away. Logan waited until the room was empty, then approached her. "That was impressive," he said honestly. "Where did you learn French?" Rosie stood, gathering her notes. "I need to pick up my son from school." "Your son?" Logan blinked. "Yes. Noah. He's 7. Logan hesitated, trying to keep his voice casual. "And his father?" Rosie met his gaze squarely. "There is no father. There's just me." With that, she picked up her bag and left, her back straight, leaving Logan staring after her with more questions than answers. That afternoon he did something he had never done before. He asked Mariana to quietly pull an employee's home address. "For HR records?" she asked, surprised. "It's personal," he admitted. Mariana raised an eyebrow but said nothing. When Logan drove through the working-class neighborhood of Pilsen and saw Rosie's modest house with peeling paint and a rusty bicycle in the yard, he realized something strange. Despite all his wealth, he envied the quiet, unshakable strength that seemed to radiate from her life. Rosie Monroe was a mystery he was determined to solve, and for the first time in years, Logan Griffin felt that maybe money and power weren't the only things worth chasing. For the next week, Logan Griffin found himself distracted in ways he never had been before. Normally, his mind was consumed by quarterly reports, mergers, and the endless dance of deals, but now, almost against his will, it kept circling back to Rosie Monroe. She arrived every morning at 6:30 sharp, worked efficiently, disappeared by 3:30, and never wasted a second. No idle chatter, no gossip, no lingering glances. She moved through the building like a shadow, invisible to everyone except the man who now couldn't stop noticing her. On Friday, he happened to cross paths with her near the elevators. She was holding an envelope stamped with the logo of Children's Memorial Hospital. Her grip was tight, her expression guarded. "Is everything all right?" Logan asked before he could stop himself. Rosie tucked the envelope under her arm. "It's fine." But her eyes betrayed a tension he hadn't seen before. That night, Logan couldn't shake the image of her clutching that envelope. He told himself it was curiosity, not concern, but deep down he knew better. The following Monday, he summoned her to his office. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Rosie stayed standing. "I'd rather stand." He exhaled. "Rosie, I know you have a child with special needs." She froze. "And that's your business because?" "Because I want to understand," Logan said carefully. "You're clearly overqualified for cleaning work. You speak multiple languages, you understand complex legal terms, you save deals in minutes. Why are you here?" Rosie looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said quietly, "Because I need money every single day. No exceptions. My son Noah is autistic. He needs occupational therapy, speech therapy, daily medication. It costs more than $3,000 a month. Cleaning work pays on time. Other jobs don't always. And his father, he decided he didn't want a defective child." Bitterness flashed in her eyes. "He disappeared before Noah's first birthday." Logan felt something tighten in his chest, a mixture of anger and compassion. "Rosie, I can help." "I don't need help," she snapped. "I need work and dignity. This isn't charity. It's recognition." He tried again. "You're worth far more than what you're making." "You already paid me what you owed," she cut in. "We're even, Mr. Griffin." And with that she walked out, leaving him speechless. That evening Logan poured himself a drink but didn't touch it. He kept thinking of the fire in her eyes when she said she wanted dignity, not charity. He had spent his life surrounded by people eager to flatter him, manipulate him, or beg him for favors, and here was a woman who did none of those things. The following week he doubled his efforts to break through her walls. The first attempt was simple. He appeared in the supply room holding 2 cups of coffee. "Brought one for you," he offered. Rosie didn't even look up from her checklist. "I don't drink company coffee." "It's not company coffee. Starbucks." "Still no." "Why not?" "Because I don't owe favors." Logan stood there awkwardly, holding both cups until he felt ridiculous and finally left. The second attempt came a few days later. "Rosie, I'm thinking of expanding the translation department. Would you be interested in?" "No. You don't even know what I was going to say. Whatever it is, the answer's no. But you don't even know the salary." "I don't need to know. It could be double what you make now." She turned to him, her voice cool. "Mr. Griffin, I already told you, I don't need charity." He clenched his jaw and walked away, frustrated. Talking to Rosie was like arguing with a fortress. But Logan Griffin was not a man who gave up. If she wouldn't tell him about herself, he would find out another way. On Tuesday, he asked Mariana to dig deeper. Look up everything on Rosie Monroe. Work history, education, past jobs, everything. Mariana hesitated. "Sir, isn't that a bit invasive?" "Professional curiosity," he lied. 2 days later, Mariana laid a thick folder on his desk. "You might want to sit down," she said. Logan flipped it open and his eyebrows shot up. Rosie Monroe had graduated magna cum laude from Northwestern University with a degree in linguistics. She held a master's in translation and interpretation. She had worked at the American consulate in Barcelona as an official translator, Category A, the highest level, entrusted with confidential documents and international negotiations. "That means she had access to diplomatic deals," Mariana explained. Logan stared at the pages, trying to reconcile the woman mopping his floors with the resume of a world-class professional. And then, he asked, "That's where it gets strange. There's a 2-year gap in her work history. Nothing registered. Then 5 years ago she shows up here as a cleaning lady. 2 years without a job? It matches the birth of her child." Logan closed the folder, deep in thought. A diplomatic interpreter scrubbing toilets. Something was very wrong with this story. The next day he tried again, this time with a different tactic. "Rosie," he called when he saw her in the hallway. She stopped, wary. "I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "I have a video conference with clients from Spain. They'll be speaking Catalan." "Do you know Catalan?" "I do." "Would you join as interpreter?" "Why not call your official translators?" "Because after what happened with the French clients, I prefer someone competent." Rosie studied him for a long moment. "What's the pay?" "500 for the meeting." 1,000. He grinned despite himself. "Deal." The following week, Rosie sat beside him during the call. Logan watched in astonishment as she not only translated flawlessly, but also captured cultural nuances, explained idioms, and clarified context in ways his regular interpreters never did. When the call ended, he leaned closer. "You're amazing at this. Where did you learn Catalan?" "Barcelona." "For work?" "What kind of work?" "The kind I don't discuss." She was closing the door again, but then unexpectedly she cracked a joke. "Talking to you is like pulling teeth from a chicken." Logan blinked, then laughed. "Mark the calendar, everyone." Rosie Monroe made a joke. For the first time she smiled faintly, and something in him shifted. For a moment it wasn't CEO and janitor, not billionaire and single mother. It was just 2 people having a conversation, light and human. But when he asked the inevitable question, "Why would someone with your qualifications work as a cleaning lady?" her smile vanished instantly. "Because sometimes life doesn't give us the options we want." "Excuse me, Mr. Griffin. I have to pick up Noah." And once again the fortress walls slammed shut. Logan watched her walk away, torn between admiration and frustration. But this time something else stirred in him. He realized his interest in Rosie Monroe was no longer professional curiosity. It was something far more personal, something dangerous, something he wasn't ready to admit out loud. He was falling for her. Logan Griffin spent 3 days trying to figure out how to invite Rosie out without scaring her away again. It couldn't be a date, that would make her defensive, and it couldn't be work because she would see through that instantly. It had to be neutral, professional, something safe. On Friday evening, he found her organizing cleaning supplies in the storeroom, her sleeves rolled up, her hands smelling faintly of disinfectant. "Rosie, I have a proposal," he said. She didn't look up. "If it's about extra work, I already said no." "It's not about work. It's a thank you." She paused, finally turning her head. "A thank you for what?" "For the translations this week. You saved 2 important contracts." "It's my job." "Exactly. And I'd like to thank you professionally." "Dinner." "Nothing more." She narrowed her eyes. "Dinner where?" "Le Bernardin. Do you know it?" "I know it's expensive. It's a respectable restaurant for a respectable professional occasion." Rosie crossed her arms, studying him as though weighing the risk. "And what exactly is the nature of this professional occasion?" "Recognition for services rendered. Networking. A civilized conversation between colleagues." Logan tried to keep his voice steady though his pulse was hammering. "Colleagues," she repeated, skeptical. "Professionals working at the same company," he affirmed. After a long silence, she gave a small nod. "All right. I'll go. But with conditions. I'm not dressing up to impress anyone. I'll wear something simple. And if I feel uncomfortable, I'm leaving." "Deal." "Deal," Logan said quickly. "And it's not a date." "Of course not. Strictly professional." The next night he arrived at the restaurant in his best suit, his nerves buzzing like he was preparing for a high-stakes negotiation. The place was elegant, with soft lighting and well-spaced tables. At exactly 8:15, Rosie walked in wearing a simple black blouse, dark jeans, and flat shoes. No heavy makeup, no jewelry. Yet somehow she carried herself with a quiet confidence that turned heads. "Sorry I'm late," she said calmly. "Traffic." "No problem," Logan replied, almost breathless. "You look very nice." "Thank you." They were led to a table in the center of the restaurant. Logan noticed a few curious glances from other diners, the kind of people who like to whisper and judge. Rosie seemed unaffected, scanning the menu with calm detachment. When the waiter arrived, he focused his smile entirely on Logan. "Would you like to start with a drink, sir?" "Red wine," Logan said. "And for the lady?" Rosie looked up. "Water, please." The waiter scribbled without looking at her. "So, wine for the gentleman." "And water for the lady," Rosie repeated firmly. The waiter hesitated, then jotted it down. Logan felt irritation spike in his chest but forced himself to stay quiet. As the evening went on, the conversation flowed more smoothly than Logan expected. Rosie spoke about books she loved, travels she had taken, and languages she had studied. She was thoughtful, sharp, and surprisingly funny when she allowed herself to be. "You've read Borges in the original Spanish?" Logan asked in amazement. "Of course. Translation never captures the rhythm. And Garcia Marquez, better in Spanish too, though some English versions aren't bad." Logan was captivated. Rosie wasn't just multilingual. She was literary, cultured, and far beyond what anyone at Griffin Imports imagined. He felt proud sitting across from her, as if the rest of the room should know how extraordinary she was. But then the mood shifted. An elegantly dressed woman at the next table stood to go to the restroom and brushed against Rosie's chair. "Oops, sorry," she said with a fake smile. "What an interesting blouse. So simple." "Thank you," Rosie said politely. The woman tilted her head. "You're not a model, are you? Or an actress?" "No, oh." She glanced at Logan with a sly look, then walked off, whispering to her companion loud enough to be overheard. Clearly an escort. Look at how she's dressed and the way she looks at him. Too obvious. Logan's blood boiled. He stood abruptly, striding over to the woman's table. "Excuse me," he said sharply. She turned with a smile, thinking he was flirting. "Yes. Do you have something to say about my guest?" Her smile faltered. I don't know what you mean. Are you suggesting she's a sex worker?" "I never said that. You didn't have to. Your tone made it clear." The woman's face turned red. "Look, I don't know who you think you are. I'm Logan Griffin, CEO of Griffin Imports. And that woman over there is one of the most capable professionals I've ever met. She speaks 6 languages, has 2 degrees, and saved my company $500,000 this month alone. You should worry less about other people's clothes and more about your manners." The woman's mouth opened and closed without sound. Logan turned on his heel and returned to the table, fury still crackling through him. Rosie was watching with an unreadable expression. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Yes, I did. I'm used to that kind of thing." "Well, I'm not. And I won't let it slide." Rosie studied him for a long moment. "Why not?" Logan's throat tightened. "Because it's wrong. Because you don't deserve to be treated that way. Because—" He stopped, realizing he was about to say something that would change everything. "Because you matter." A silence stretched between them. Rosie looked away. "I think we should go." "Of course." He paid the bill quickly and they stepped into the cold night. On the sidewalk under the yellow glow of a street lamp, Rosie pulled her blouse tighter. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "And for standing up for me." "No need to thank me." "Yes, I do. It's been a long time since anyone's done that for me." For a moment they stood there, breath hanging in the winter air. Logan felt an impulse surge through him, reckless and unstoppable. He leaned forward and kissed her. For one brief second she didn't move. Then she pulled back and slapped him hard across the face. The crack echoed down the street. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her eyes blazing. I'm sorry, you said this was professional, it was a reflex." "A reflex?" Rosie laughed bitterly. "Of course. The rich CEO kissing the poor cleaning lady. What a lovely soap opera. It's exactly like that." She was already walking away, her heels clicking against the pavement. "Thanks for proving all men are the same." "Rosie, wait." But she was already sliding into her car, slamming the door and driving away, leaving Logan standing stunned and humiliated on the sidewalk, his cheek burning, his heart racing with the realization that he had ruined everything. On Monday morning, Rosie Monroe arrived at Griffin Imports at 6:30 sharp as always, her expression calm, her steps steady, but there was a new chill in the air around her. She greeted the security guard politely, collected her cart of cleaning supplies, and went about her work with the same efficiency, but she avoided everyone's eyes, especially Logan's. When he came looking for her at 9:15, the storage room was empty except for a neatly taped note on the door. "Basement cleaning done. Next stop, 12th floor." He hurried upstairs, but by the time he reached the 12th floor she had already vanished into another hallway. It became a pattern over the next days. Logan would catch sight of her reflection in a window, or hear her mop squeaking in the distance, but whenever he tried to approach she would move away, her answers clipped, polite, professional, and cold. "Rosie, please, about Saturday night," he said once as she scrubbed a conference table. She didn't even turn around. "There's nothing to talk about." "There is," he insisted. "I acted like a fool." "I agree. Apology accepted. Now let me work." The wall was back up, higher and thicker than before. She called him Mr. Griffin again, not Logan, and made it clear that whatever fragile bridge had existed between them had been burned. Meanwhile, on the 35th floor, a very different conversation was unfolding. In the boardroom, James Morrison, the CFO, Richard Hayes, the COO, and Sandra Walsh, head of HR, sat around a polished mahogany table with their laptops open and their expressions grave. "We've got a problem," James said, adjusting his glasses. "That cleaning lady is getting too much attention." Sandra frowned. "Rosie Monroe?" "Exactly. She's been sitting in on meetings, translating for clients, and getting paid nearly as much as our senior translators. And Logan is clearly interested." Richard leaned back, his tone dry. "Personally interested. That's a risk for the company." James nodded. "Think about it. A janitor with access to confidential contracts, clients' operations. If she decides to sell information or file a harassment claim against Logan, we're finished." Sandra added quietly, "Or if this thing between them blows up, we'll be dealing with lawsuits and scandal." Richard tapped the table. "So what do you suggest?" James leaned forward, his eyes cold. "Termination. Quiet, clean, no fuss. We come up with an excuse: budget cuts, restructuring, outsourcing. Logan doesn't need to know it's our decision. It will look like just another administrative change." Sandra hesitated. "That could backfire. She's currently on translation contracts." "Then we wait until she finishes those," James replied. "We let her go after." "Simple." Richard nodded slowly. "Perfect. Sandra, handle the paperwork." Quietly. End of the week. While the executives plotted her dismissal, Rosie was on the 15th floor cleaning the very meeting room where she had once corrected James's French translation. She worked methodically, trying not to think about the disastrous dinner, the kiss, the slap, or the confusing swirl of emotion she had buried deep inside. The worst part was that she had liked the kiss for that one split second. That was what scared her most. She couldn't afford to dream. Dreams were luxuries for people with safety nets. She had responsibilities, a son who needed her unwavering strength. Logan Griffin was a distraction she could not allow. On Thursday, Sandra Walsh appeared in the basement holding a folder. "Rosie, I need a word." Rosie set down her spray bottle. "Of course, Miss Walsh. Is there a problem with my work?" "No, your work is excellent. It's about restructuring. The company is going through some adjustments. Nothing serious, but we need to make a few cuts." Rosie's eyes narrowed. "Restructuring. Unfortunately, that includes the cleaning department. We're outsourcing the service. Friday will be your last day. And the translation contracts are also under review." Rosie's face stayed calm though her chest tightened. She wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what this was. "I understand," she said softly. "Thank you for letting me know in advance." Sandra shifted uncomfortably. "Rosie, this has nothing to do with your performance. You've been an excellent employee." "Of course it doesn't," Rosie said with a faint, bitter smile. On Friday morning, Logan found out by accident. He walked into Mariana's office to drop off papers and spotted a termination form on her desk. His eyes locked on the name Rosie Monroe. "What's this?" "Oh, termination of the cleaning department. Restructuring." Logan's voice rose. "What restructuring? No one consulted me." Mariana's face went pale. "It was the board's decision, sir." Logan stormed toward the conference room, fury boiling inside him. He found James, Richard, and Sandra going over financial reports. "Will someone explain to me why Rosie Monroe is being fired without my approval?" They exchanged looks. James cleared his throat. "Logan, this was an administrative decision. Nothing administrative about it. Since when do you fire specific employees without consulting me?" Richard tried to sound reasonable. "It's about efficiency. Outsourcing cleaning is cheaper." "That's a lie," Logan snapped. "You want her gone because you think she has too much influence over me." Sandra shifted. "Logan, you need to admit the situation is irregular." "Irregular how?" "A cleaning lady being paid nearly as much as certified translators. And your personal relationship." "What personal relationship?" Logan shot back. The dinner last Saturday, the private conversations, the interest. Logan glared at them with disgust. You're firing a competent employee over gossip. She is better than our certified professionals. You can't stand that. James sighed. Logan, the termination is final. Too late, Sandra added, checking her watch. She's already been told. Logan's stomach dropped. He bolted out of the room, heart pounding. He found Rosie in the parking lot, a cardboard box of belongings in her arms. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, her face calm, almost relieved. Rosie, wait. She turned slowly. Hi, Mr. Griffin. I just heard. I didn't authorize this. I'll reverse it. She shook her head. There's no need. What do you mean, no need? I was planning to leave anyway. Logan blinked, stunned. Why? Because I don't want to work in a place where I'm seen as a threat. And that's what I am, to their egos, to your reputation, to the company's status quo. It doesn't matter that I work hard or save deals. To them, I'll always be the cleaning lady who doesn't know her place. She set the box gently into the trunk of her old Honda Civic, its paint scratched and antenna broken. Rosie, let me help. I can find you another job. I can call contacts. Logan, stop. Her voice was firm. I don't want your pity. I just want my dignity. It's not pity. It's… what? Guilt? Obligation? Unresolved interest? I don't need saving. I've been taking care of myself for years. Her eyes were steady, unwavering. You see me as a project. Someone to fix. But I'm not your project, Mr. Griffin. She climbed into her car, started the engine, and said softly through the open window, Take care. Then she drove off into the Chicago traffic, leaving Logan standing in the cold wind of the parking lot, stunned, furious, and more determined than ever not to let her disappear from his life. For an entire week after Rosie drove away from Griffin Imports, Logan Griffin could not focus. Contracts piled on his desk, investors demanded attention, but his mind replayed the image of her slipping into her battered Honda with quiet dignity, refusing his help. He told himself to move on, that she was just an employee, but every time he closed his eyes he saw her steady gaze, her calm defiance, her refusal to be bought. Finally, unable to stand the gnawing questions any longer, he called Mariana into his office. Run a full background check, he ordered. On Rosie Monroe. Everything. Education, work history, family, past employers. I want it all. Mariana hesitated. Sir, with respect, is this really appropriate? It's necessary, Logan snapped, though he knew he was lying even to himself. 2 days later Mariana returned with a thick folder. You should see this, she said, placing it on his desk. Logan flipped it open and felt his breath catch. Northwestern University, magna cum laude in linguistics. A master's degree in translation and interpretation. Fluent in 6 languages. Then the real shock. 3 years as an official translator at the American consulate in Barcelona. Category A, diplomatic clearance. She had interpreted for ministers, CEOs, billion-dollar contracts. She wasn't just good, Mariana murmured. She was the best. Logan turned the page. Then came the gap, 2 years with no employment record. After that, 5 years ago, she appeared as a cleaning lady at Griffin Imports. 2 years missing, Logan muttered. It lines up with the birth of her child, Mariana pointed out. Logan closed the folder slowly. Something terrible must have happened. That night he couldn't sleep. By morning he had decided. If Rosie wouldn't tell him her story, he would find out another way. He called in favors, reached out to old contacts in government and law. Whispers came back. A name, Meridian Global, one of the largest consulting firms in the country. Rosie had worked there, not just as a translator but as a senior interpreter on international deals. And then she had been fired in disgrace for professional misconduct. Rumors of forged documents, botched translations, ethical violations. Logan knew smear campaigns when he saw one. The pieces didn't add up. A woman like Rosie didn't suddenly become incompetent. Something darker was buried here. On Wednesday evening, he drove to her neighborhood in Pilsen again. Her small house looked tired but alive, with a rusty bike in the yard and faint light glowing through the curtains. He parked across the street, conflicted. Finally, he knocked. The door opened and there was Noah, the boy with bright eyes and careful steps. "Hi," Noah said cheerfully. "You're Logan, right? The man from Mom's work." "Yes," Logan smiled awkwardly. "Is your mom home?" "Mom," Noah called. Rosie appeared in the hallway, her face hardening the moment she saw him. "What are you doing here?" "I just want 5 minutes," Logan said quickly. "Please." She looked at Noah, who was watching curiously. "Go play in your room, sweetheart." When the boy left, she crossed her arms. "Make it fast." "I know about Meridian," Logan said softly. Rosie stiffened. "You don't know anything." "Then tell me. Because what I see is a woman who should be running international negotiations, cleaning floors instead." "Why?" Her eyes blazed. "You really want to know? Fine. In 2018, I discovered Meridian was laundering money through shell companies and fraudulent contracts. I had proof, emails, documents, recordings. I tried reporting it internally. My supervisor told me to shut up. I went higher, to the director, the VP. They all told me to stop asking questions. When I didn't, they fired me. Spread lies that I was incompetent. Blacklisted me. Every job application vanished once they checked references. I spent every dollar fighting in court, but they had better lawyers, better connections. Judges, journalists, prosecutors. My evidence disappeared, ruled inadmissible. And then the threats started. Anonymous calls, cars parked outside my house. That's when I found out I was pregnant. The father was a colleague at Meridian. When I told him about the threats, he called me a liability and left. I had nothing, no job, no safety, no support. So I moved here, found the only work that paid cash and asked no questions. Cleaning." Her voice broke, then hardened again. "That's why, Mr. Griffin. Not incompetence. Survival." Logan's chest burned with fury, not at her but at the company that had destroyed her. "Rosie, you were punished for doing the right thing." "I was. And I learned my lesson. Keep my head down. Work hard. Don't draw attention. That's how I keep my son safe." For a moment neither spoke. Then Logan said, "Rosie, I can help." "Don't." She cut him off. "I don't want saving." He swallowed hard. "Then let me fight with you." "No. Because fighting means danger. And I can't risk Noah." She turned away, signaling the conversation was over. Logan left that night more determined than ever. He couldn't let the world crush her a second time. But the storm was already coming. 2 days later, headlines exploded across business media. "Suspicious translator now working with CEO Logan Griffin." An article appeared online detailing Rosie's firing from Meridian, accusing her of misconduct, hinting at a personal relationship with Logan. It contained details only someone inside Griffin Imports could have leaked. Logan slammed his laptop shut, fury coursing through him. They were coming for her again. That afternoon he received a call from Mariana. "Sir, the board has scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday. They want to discuss Rosie Monroe." "Of course they do," Logan muttered. But before Monday could arrive, fate intervened. On Saturday morning, a black SUV pulled up outside Rosie's small house. 2 agents stepped out, flashing IDs. "Miss Monroe," one said. "I'm Agent Davis. This is Agent Chun, FBI. We need to speak with you about Meridian Global." Rosie froze on the doorstep, Noah clutching her hand. "I already lost everything because of Meridian. And now you can help us finish what you started," Davis said firmly. "We have reopened the investigation. We have evidence. But we need your testimony." Rosie's voice shook. "When?" "Monday morning. Federal Court, Chicago." The hearing will be broadcast live. Rosie felt her knees weaken. She looked down at Noah, then back at the agents. Do I have a choice? Agent Chun placed a subpoena on the table. Not really. That night Rosie called Logan. He answered on the first ring. Rosie, where are you? The board. Logan, listen. Tomorrow I testify in federal court. About Meridian. His heart jolted. That's good. They'll clear your name. Or destroy what's left of it. The hearing is live. Nationwide. Everyone will know. So what? You'll finally be vindicated. And your company will be dragged into the storm. Your suspension might become permanent. You'll lose everything because of me. Then let me lose it, Logan said fiercely. Because I'm not abandoning you. Rosie was silent a long moment. Finally she whispered, Goodbye, Logan. Don't come to the courthouse. Please. And she hung up. Logan sat there staring at the phone, his heart pounding. He knew he would go anyway. On Monday morning, the Dirksen Federal Courthouse in downtown Chicago buzzed with reporters, cameras flashing like 1,000 tiny explosions as Rosie Monroe walked through the doors flanked by 2 FBI agents. She wore a plain dark suit provided by the government, her hair pulled into a neat bun, her face pale but resolute. Inside, the courtroom was packed with journalists, lawyers, curious citizens, and even international observers. Logan watched from a television in his office, his suspension keeping him away, but his heart hammered in his chest as if he were sitting beside her. When the federal prosecutor stood and called Rosie to the witness stand, the room fell silent. Miss Monroe, did you work for Meridian Global between 2015 and 2018? Yes. Her voice was steady. And what was your role? Senior translator and interpreter for international negotiations. During that time, did you have access to confidential documents? Yes. It was part of my job. And what did you find in those documents? Rosie drew a breath, her hands clasped tightly together. I discovered Meridian was facilitating illegal money transfers through fraudulent contracts. Shell companies were created in tax havens to launder money from criminal sources. First I thought it was a mistake, but then I saw the pattern. The prosecutor leaned closer. Can you give us an example? In March 2018, I translated a contract between Meridian and a company called Baltic Ventures. It involved the purchase of industrial equipment worth $50 million. But when I checked, Baltic Ventures didn't exist. The address was a post office box in the Cayman Islands. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. What did you do with this information? I looked deeper. I found dozens of similar contracts, all involving shell companies. I gathered documents, recordings, emails. Enough to prove Meridian knew and participated in laundering money for cartels and oligarchs. And what happened when you reported it? Rosie's voice cracked, but she pressed on. I was fired for professional incompetence. They spread rumors I fabricated everything out of revenge. My references were blacklisted. I was threatened, followed, harassed. My apartment was ransacked. I was told I would disappear if I didn't shut up. Miss Monroe, do you have evidence of these threats? Rosie nodded to Agent Chun, who handed over a flash drive. The prosecutor played one of the recordings. A distorted male voice echoed through the speakers. You should stop making up stories, Rosie. People who talk too much sometimes vanish. Gasps filled the courtroom. The prosecutor let the silence hang. Miss Monroe, why keep this evidence hidden for so long? Because I wanted to protect my son. And because I knew the truth would come out eventually. Even after your career was destroyed? Especially because of that, she said, her voice fierce now. I couldn't let them bury the truth forever. At home, Logan's throat tightened as he watched. For the first time, the world was seeing what he had glimpsed all along. Rosie's courage. Do you still maintain that Meridian Global engaged in money laundering? The prosecutor asked. Rosie straightened in her chair. I don't maintain it. I prove it. She held up another flash drive. This contains emails between Meridian executives discussing how to split profits from the schemes, including conversations about silencing me permanently. The prosecutor smiled faintly. Thank you, Miss Monroe. No further questions. The defense attorney rose quickly. Miss Monroe, isn't it true you were fired for incompetence? That your accusations were dismissed by multiple courts? It's true they fired me, Rosie said. It's true I lost in court. But I lost because my evidence was stolen or declared inadmissible, not because it didn't exist. You can dismiss me, but you cannot dismiss these documents. Agent Davis carried a box forward and set it on the table. Inside were flash drives, papers, CDs. Your Honor, the prosecutor said, this evidence was discovered recently in Miss Monroe's old apartment in Washington. It had been hidden by her landlord and preserved. It corroborates everything she has testified to. The defense attorney sputtered objections, but the judge allowed the evidence. Pages flashed on the screen: emails, contracts, balance sheets. The courtroom gasped as names of politicians, businessmen, and foreign dignitaries appeared, all tied to Meridian's network. When Rosie stepped down from the witness stand 3 hours later, the courtroom erupted in whispers. She didn't acknowledge them. She simply walked out with her head high. Cameras swarmed outside, reporters shouted her name, but she kept walking silently to the FBI car. Logan, watching from his office, felt a swell of pride and relief. She had done it. She had faced the world and told the truth. That evening, every news channel carried her testimony. Whistleblower vindicated, read one headline. Meridian Global exposed an billion-dollar laundering scheme. The company's stock plummeted overnight. By Thursday morning, Meridian's interim CEO held a press conference. We publicly acknowledge serious mistakes were made in the case of Miss Rosie Monroe, he said solemnly. We apologize for the harm caused to her life and career. Meridian will establish a compensation fund and implement policies to protect whistleblowers. Logan nearly dropped his coffee. They weren't just acknowledging her, they were apologizing. Later that day, Richard Hayes called him. Logan, did you see the press conference? I did. The board met last night. Your suspension has been lifted. We need you back as CEO immediately. Logan smirked. Interesting how fast you changed your minds. The company lost $3 million in canceled contracts last week. Clients want to know if we still support Monroe. We need you to manage the situation. And Rosie? Logan asked coldly. About that, maybe we acted too hastily. If she wants to return, we'd reconsider. Logan hung up without another word. He didn't need their permission anymore. An hour later, he was at the hotel where Rosie was staying under FBI protection. She was on the balcony overlooking Lake Michigan when he entered. She turned, her eyes wary. Hi, he said softly. Hi. I saw you were reinstated. News travels fast. It's all over the headlines. Chicago CEO back in charge after employee cleared. Me? I feel strange. For years I dreamed of this moment being believed, clearing my name. But now that it's here, I don't know what to do. I've spent so long hiding that I don't know how to live openly. Logan stepped closer. Rosie, I have a proposal. Professional. You deserve more than survival. I want you to be Director of International Relations at Griffin Imports. $200,000 a year, full benefits, health insurance for you and Noah, flexible hours, your own team. Rosie's eyes widened. Logan, I can't. People will say it's favoritism, that you're promoting me because of whatever this is between us. Then let them. You're the most qualified person I've ever met. Any company would fight to have you. You've proven your integrity under pressure most people couldn't survive. She studied him carefully. And Noah. We have daycare at the building. Teachers trained for kids with special needs. Or you can work from home when you want. Whatever you need. Silence hung for a long moment. Finally, Rosie extended her hand. If I accept, we do it properly. A clear contract. No expectations, no pressure. If it doesn't work, I walk away. Logan shook her hand firmly. Deal, Director Monroe. And for the first time since she had slapped him in the cold Chicago night, Rosie allowed herself a small, genuine smile. Rosie Monroe's first day as Director of International Relations at Griffin Imports felt surreal. She had an office on the 30th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, a staff of assistants eager to follow her lead, and a schedule packed with meetings. Within a week, she had closed 2 stalled contracts and impressed clients with her ability to navigate cultural and legal nuances others missed. Even the skeptics in the building fell silent after watching her dismantle a complex Japanese trade agreement in 20 minutes flat. Logan watched from a distance, pride swelling in his chest, careful not to interfere with her work. Their professional arrangement was clear, but beneath the surface something stronger simmered. 2 weeks later, Logan knocked on her office door. "Professional proposal," he said with a crooked smile. "There's an international trade conference in Paris. Biggest event of the year. I want you there as our lead interpreter." Rosie raised an eyebrow. "Paris? 3 days, 5-star hotel, endless opportunities for rumors. What exactly would I be doing?" "Translating, negotiating, representing Griffin. Strictly business." After a pause, she nodded. "Then I'm in. But if you try to kiss me, I'll throw you off the Eiffel Tower." Logan laughed. Noted. In Paris, the city seemed to come alive around them. Rosie navigated multilingual meetings with elegance, shifting from Japanese to Mandarin to French without missing a beat. Delegates marveled at her skill. Logan marveled at her composure. One evening, walking along the Seine after a long day, he asked quietly, "Do you ever think about forgiving?" "Forgiving who?" "Me. For that night." Rosie looked out over the river. "I forgave you a long time ago. You respected my boundaries afterward. That mattered." Logan exhaled, tension easing. "And Noah's father?" Her face darkened. "That's harder. Not for what he did to me, but for what he did to Noah. Abandoning a child. I'm still working on that." At the conference gala, Rosie wore a simple navy dress, understated yet stunning. Logan offered his hand. "Professional colleagues can dance, right?" She rolled her eyes but placed her hand in his. They moved together effortlessly, drawing glances from the crowd. "Do you remember the first time we met?" he asked. "I remember you yelling about Basque documents and me saving you. And me doubting you. One of your bigger mistakes," she teased. For a while they danced in silence, her eyes catching the light, his chest tightening with words he couldn't hold back. "Rosie, you've made me a better man," he whispered. "Not just at work. In life." Before she could respond, the master of ceremonies called Logan to the stage for closing remarks. He hesitated, but she gave him a gentle push. "Go. Show them why Griffin matters." Logan stepped onto the stage before 300 executives and diplomats. "When I came to this conference, I thought I was here to talk about contracts and profits," he began. "But I've learned something more important. Success isn't about money. It's about courage. Courage to do the right thing when the world is against you. Courage to speak the truth even when it costs everything. Courage to start over." His gaze found Rosie in the crowd. "I learned that from someone I work with. Someone who reminds me every day that integrity and brilliance can come from the most unexpected places." A hush fell over the room. Logan's voice softened. "And sometimes love does too." He stepped down from the stage, microphone still in hand, and walked straight to Rosie. Her eyes widened as the entire ballroom turned to watch. "Rosie Monroe," he said, his voice steady. "I love you. I love your intelligence, your strength, your compassion. I love how fiercely you protect Noah, how you never give up. You've changed my life. Will you marry me?" The room exploded in gasps. Rosie laughed and cried at once. "You're insane," she whispered. "Is that a yes?" "Ask me again when we're not on live television," she said, tears streaming. Logan kissed her hand gallantly as the audience erupted in applause. 6 months later, Chicago awoke to a crystal blue sky. On the rooftop of Griffin Imports, transformed into a hanging garden of white and gold, Rosie Monroe walked toward Logan Griffin in a satin gown that shimmered in the morning light. Noah, now 8 and thriving in his new school, carried the rings with solemn concentration. Friends, colleagues, clients, and neighbors filled the rows, but Rosie saw only Logan waiting at the altar, his eyes shining with joy. "Rosie Monroe," he said, his voice trembling. "You showed me that real strength comes from character, not wealth. I promise to love Noah as my own, to be your partner in everything, and never to underestimate a cleaning lady again." Laughter rippled warmly through the crowd. Rosie's tears glistened as she answered, "Logan Griffin, you showed me that not all powerful men abuse power, that trust is possible again. I promise to challenge you when needed, support you always, and translate all your boring meetings for the rest of our lives." They exchanged rings as Noah clapped excitedly. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Logan kissed Rosie with a tenderness that silenced the city below. The celebration lasted late into the night, but the most meaningful moment came when Rosie pulled Logan aside on the terrace. "Remember the social project we talked about? For women like me, invisible, silenced." Logan nodded. "I want that to be our first official act as a couple. Mentorship, training, a chance for them to show the world what they're capable of." Logan kissed her forehead. "We'll start Monday." She laughed. "Why wait?" He smiled. "I love your impatience." They stood together looking over the Chicago skyline, the city lights shimmering like stars. Rosie whispered, "You know what's funny? 2 years ago I was cleaning this building, staring up at this terrace, wondering what the view was like. I never imagined I'd stand here as its owner." Logan pulled her close. "You were always the owner. It just took me too long to see it." She smiled through joyful tears. "Logan Griffin, I never needed your pity, just your respect. And now your love. You have both forever." They kissed again under the open sky with Noah dancing nearby, proof that happy endings exist, especially for those brave enough to fight for them.